Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to African American Conservative, your source for political news and commentary from a cultural and right-of-center perspective. African American Conservative, the soul of the conservative movement.
Our next guest is John Hancock. He's a historian, author, and speaker who specializes in the history of the American-speaking people, their origins, their development, and their impact on the formation of the modern world. He lives in Southern California with his wife and 2 children. Please help me welcome to the show, John Hancock. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you for having me.
You wrote that, quote, having a passion for history, I dedicated myself to answer the 3 questions on America's exceptionalism. What is its meaning? What is its origin? And can it be preserved? The result of that quest is this book, end quote. How did this quest and this book come about?
Well, I've always had an interest in, since grade school, of history. One of the first books I remember checking out of the elementary school library was Sir Francis Drake and the Spanish Armada. So I always learned like English history, British history, and American history. And one of the things that happened was in 2008 I went to England with my son. He was 13. We went to museums. And through that I started to see more of how much of our American liberties we actually are English liberties, originated there, and the English exceptionalism. And on top of that, I happened to be at Glenn Beck's rally in Washington, and I saw all the people there. And the next day I went to Mount Vernon and saw Washington's mansion, and I was talking to people about this, and I saw that a lot of Americans, we know America is exceptional. We know there's something special about it, but we don't know exactly what that is. And so I set out to find out exactly what is it that makes America exceptional, and, you know, are we still able to preserve it? Because it's not being taught anymore. Those of us who believe that America is exceptional, we're kind of inheriting this knowledge from our parents, our grandparents, maybe, especially those from the World War II generation. So I wanted to put something in words to give people who believe America is exceptional, when they're pushed, why do you believe that, they can turn around and answer that.
Exactly. And, you know, we had David Barton on the show a few weeks ago, and we have this whole revisionist history thing going on. You know, the things that I was taught in school definitely have a liberal slant to them. And until you study for yourself, it's so funny, at church the other day, we have an intern with us for the summer, and he was talking about, we don't know our own history, and he was asking some basic questions. He was talking about, the citizenship test that many people have to take to become citizens of this country. And he was saying, do you know the answer to those questions? And he asked a lot of them. Now, I got 100%, but I'm just saying it's funny how a lot of people don't know some of the basic things about our country.
Yeah, it is. And actually, you see that a lot, and I'll say it mostly on the liberal side. You'll see more ignorance of our history. That's one thing I see when I go out and I talk, or even if I'm just in an informal setting, I'm talking to people, and liberals will bring up something like, well, this point or that point, and what they're really doing is just repeating something they've heard, but they've never actually investigated beyond what they were taught maybe in school or picked up here and there. And we have a very unique and rich history, and it goes even further when you trace that back into England.
Yes.
One of the other books I'm working on now is going to be the 1600-year history of liberty, because that's where it goes, and it's an amazing story. I was blown away by it, and it's almost miraculous if you think about this little country the size of Alabama being able to take this system of liberty and individual rights and private property, and they use that system to come and basically dominate 3/4 of the world within a few hundred years.
Exactly.
And then the torch was passed to us because we inherited, as an offspring of that system, we inherited it. And what a lot of people don't realize is that we took a system that was already established in England, And we just took it to the next level, you know, by eliminating the aristocracy, by eliminating the elites, by eliminating the king, and establishing the presidency and our form of government that we have now.
Although I think we're kind of going back to that whole king thing, but that's another topic.
Well, it's funny because I just did today I just did a blog post on my blog. It says Obama, you know, the James II of the 21st century. And in my book I talk about the Revolution of 1688, which basically gave which justified the American Revolution almost 100 years later. But I explained on there how he was trying to do the same thing. He tried to get around by using royal prerogative. He tried to go around the Parliament, which is the same thing we have here, using executive orders. And I show the two. And yeah, history repeats itself. There are parallels, and it's amazing what you see. And I just ended in England, because a king is a king for life. They had to have a revolution and throw him out of the country and send him back into France. We are lucky. We don't have to go to such extremes. We could just vote him out, you know, this November.
Let's hope that's true. That's what Professor Swain was just saying. She said, you know, there's kind of this backup system where we're seeing these executive orders that, you know, are pandering to a specific segment of our population, and, you know, the people in Spain are going to be counting our votes, and that's kind of, you know, this George Soros thing. So, oh yeah, come bring your ballots to me and I'll count them for you. So, yeah, right. Now, when asked whether he believed in American exceptionalism, President Obama answered the question dismissively, saying, quote, "I believe in American exceptionalism just as I suspect that the Brits believe in British exceptionalism and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism," end quote. What is American exceptionalism, and why, in your view, is it much more than how our president has defined it?
I believe, for one thing, is what I just said. We took a system that was very exceptional to begin with in England. If you see how that originated, it was very unique in the world, because the rest of the world at the time was basically serfdom and servitude. You know, the individual did not have freedoms. He did not have rights. And we built on that. And when I speak of America's exceptionalism in the book, what I talk about is not in a sense how it's sometimes used as if, you know, a divine type of inspiration. For the purpose of the book, I use it as that it's a very unique country. It's a very unique nation when compared to everybody else or all the other nations in the world. And that's what makes it exceptional. The idea that we were the first country or the first nation state to be able to be, or that is based on the principle that man can rule himself without some sort of a monarchy, without elites telling the common people what to do. We are able to do that. That makes us exceptional. And I think just the American, what we call the American dream itself, you know, you don't hear people talking about, you know, the Peruvian dream or the French dream. I mean, the American dream has significance. It's a saying that is known around the world. And I think that by itself proves that America is exceptional.
And the fact that we have the problem that we have that we were talking about earlier with people coming into this country illegally, it is ostensibly to be part of that American dream. You don't see people sneaking across the border to, you know, the north or the south. It's people are coming here because there's something special that we have here.
And I share that in a conversation that I started off the book that way. I was talking to someone, and they were saying about, you know, what does it matter who's president? You know, what does it matter, you know, why does everybody get worked up? And she's from another country, Mexico, and and she was saying, look, you know, the people I know from Mexico, they did good under George Bush, and they're doing good under Barack Obama. Nothing's really changed for them. And you know, her main point was that, you know, if you have abilities and so forth, you could make a living. So I asked her, I said, well, then why are they here? Why aren't they using their abilities in Mexico? Do their abilities stop at the border, or you know, there's a reason why they're here, because their abilities, doesn't matter how much abilities they have, the system of government you have in Mexico won't allow people to rise up, to elevate themselves. It's designed to keep a few elites in power and suppress the rest. So they come here because they know they could have a shot at something. They could have a shot at the opportunity to make something better for themselves and their families.
That was a great point. What did she say to that?
Well, I'll be honest, it was my wife. So, she just kind of, when I go on tangents like that, she just kind of shrugs at me. She's not a history or political animal like I am, so she just looks at me like I've lost something.
But I think that's part of it, though. In a sense that my mom was a huge history buff. I mean, she was particularly she liked England and the kings and queens. I remember this one book that she had that I just loved to read. It was about the kings and queens of England. But just that, going back to that point, that we really, I guess, don't really know our history that well. And a lot of times our elections are, I liken them to American Idol or Survivor. We vote people off, or we just hear these little sound bites. But we don't really know a lot about the history of this country and the struggle that vote means, that independence that we have, and that right that we have to be able to govern ourselves.
Yeah, and it goes to a broader struggle that we have right now. One of the things I came to realize is what we're trying to defend now is not the rights of the West, from Islam. We aren't trying to defend capitalism from the Marxist-type people or the theologies. What we're trying to defend is what our founding fathers were to call our rights of Englishmen, our rights as Englishmen. And that, again, that comes down to four basic principles of limited government, individual rights, private property, and free enterprise economics, or free market economics. And what we need to realize is there are a few countries that have these same principles. Great Britain, to a degree, still has them. Australia, New Zealand, Canada. And we're seeing both a struggle within and without these nations through Marxism and Islamofascism. We're seeing an attack on these principles. Mm-hmm. And I know Daniel Hannon. He helped me a lot on the book.
He's been on the show.
And he wrote a blurb for it. Yeah, and a few others, politicians in Australia and Canada. And, what we're kind of talking about is, the English-speaking world needs to wake up.
Yeah.
And we need to realize, we need to look beyond just our own borders and see what is going on. Because for 400 years, first the British Empire and then America, we're able to impose our way onto these people, onto the rest of the world. And they didn't like it. And they're resentful, and not everybody appreciates our way of life. And now they're sensing weakness within us, within our nations, and they think it's time to strike back. It's time to shake off what, it's amazing that Charles de Gaulle, the French president and World War II hero, referred to both the United States and Great Britain as the Anglo-Saxon countries. And that's how most of the world sees us, as Anglo-Saxon countries. And we got to realize this is an attack on our principles that are the foundation of all the English-speaking countries.
Now, in the book, you place a great deal of emphasis on what you call classical liberalism, calling it, quote, a philosophy pivotal to the establishment and development of the United States, end quote. What is classical liberalism, and how is it distinguished from modern liberalism, or as you refer to it, faux liberalism?
Yeah, classical liberalism was those principles that were basically, as I explained, that this nation was based on, which was limited government, maximized individual rights, private property, and free market economics. Now, those are the four core beliefs of a classical liberal, and it used to be called Whiggism back in the old days in England. But that is basically, I believe, is the the highest point of the Enlightenment, where man has gone and was able to control himself. And if you compare this to modern-day liberalism, what I call pro-liberalism, they do not believe that the individual is supreme. The state is supreme. You know, they want to, through PC, they want to control our way of thinking through hate speech laws and so forth. They want to limit what we say and what we can speak. You know, if you go out to speak and you're a conservative, who's the ones that want to limit your freedom of speech and want to shout you down? It's the so-called, liberals. Mm. So, of course, and then they're anti-private property. They're anti-free market economics. So they are the complete opposite. They're almost like, wolves in sheep clothing.
Mm-hmm. Now, we often hear how the Founding Fathers drew inspiration from the great philosophers of the past, such as Plato, John Locke, and Tocqueville, and from works such as The Leviathan, Utopia, and the Republic. Yet you point out that this inspiration came about somewhat secondhand, as they were already drawn upon to inspire the British thinkers who created such works as the Declaration of Rights of 1689. Can you expand upon how the founders were simply being British, so to speak, and why you think we so often skip this step when we speak of education and inspiration of the founders?
Yeah, one of the main points, if you see anything on the Revolution, or even like the movie John Adams, HBO movie, at the beginning, what were they fighting for? They were fighting for their rights as Englishmen. A lot of people don't give it much thought, but there was 14 months between the battles of Lexington and Concord and the Declaration of Independence. So what were they, there's a lot of fighting, a lot of dying going on in between that period. So what were they fighting for? Excuse me. So, so it's real easy. They're fighting for the rights of Englishmen. Well, why did they think they had rights of Englishmen? And where did they get those rights from, or that concept from? And that concept originated with 1688, the Revolution of 1688, and the Declaration of Rights. And if you read the Declaration of Rights, and in my book I have it in the back, but you'll see a lot of similarities between it and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Some of the articles are almost identical. There's just slight wording that are different, or the way, they will refer to someone in the Declaration of Rights as a subject, where we refer to them as a citizen. Mm-hmm. But it's very similar. And those are the rights that they were talking about. That's what they were fighting for initially. And when London and the King and Parliament wasn't recognizing their petitions, then it was only at that point that the Founding Fathers decided, okay, they aren't going to listen to us. It's time for us to part ways and establish our own country.
Now, as we discussed, America is a diverse nation, a nation, quote, not defined by its geography, religion, culture, or bloodline, unquote. This diversity you acknowledge is a strength to our nation, but you also warn of multiculturalism, which you call, quote, a fungus that eats away at the roots of the liberty tree, end quote. Can you tell us a little more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, our strengths, our diversity is strong, but you need something, a common thread to hold us together, and especially in a country like the United States, where we are not based on a religion, we're not based on ethnicity, we are based on an idea. And when you sit there and say that idea is not as important as any other idea, it dilutes it, and it almost weakens the cement that holds us all together. In the past, when immigrants came here, they bought into the American idea, and that was that we are able to that America was exceptional. It had a system that allowed one to succeed, and you could keep your ethnic identity. One of the blogs I wrote was that I had a friend that was Japanese, and they have grown up, and they had all the Japanese customs and did everything. But deep down, as far as principles, as their core values, he was just as American as I was. And so we need to keep that. What is America? Why is it special? Why is it important to be an American? And that doesn't mean, everybody has to run around eating, roast beef and potatoes or hot dogs all the time. You can have your identity. You can have your ethnic or your cultural background. I mean, my family's Irish, so we have, on St. Patrick's Day, I still do corned beef and cabbage and all that stuff. But I'm not Irish. I am American of Irish descent, but I'm not Irish. I uphold the ideas of what it is to be an American. And when you dilute that idea, then it stops working. I mean, America stops being a country. We just start being a bunch of little tribes everywhere. And that's why I think English, too. I mean, I'm fluent in Spanish, but we need English. You've got to have people have a commonality in order to keep a nation and a society. Otherwise, again, everybody just breaks down into little tribes.
And I think we're, as we talk about what's going on with our country economically, and we talk about, the example of Greece, for example, we're seeing this multicultural issue play out in England. I remember Daniel Hannan spoke of that. So I think that conservatives get a bad rap, because we hate women and we hate, every ethnicity under the sun. We hate everything, basically. That people don't understand what we're talking about when we talk about this issue. I think people think that we're asking people to give up their heritage or to give up their culture, and that's not what we're asking. It's exactly what you said, that there has to be a commonality of beliefs, a core, for example, having English as our standard language. Other countries have English as their first language or whatever country they're from, but there are many countries that are based on English as their national language. And no one says that, they're racist. So, I think that we get a bad rap for that issue. But you've spoken to it eloquently, and I wish people would see it the way that we've discussed it tonight.
Well, and it's like this show, and that is one of the hard parts being a conservative is, and when you write on a topic like this, because I do talk, I touch on religion, I touch on race and culture, is being marked as a racist. And it just, when liberals throw that word out, it just really, it just infuriates me, because no, I'm upholding the real values. I mean, I'm judging everybody as an individual, as every conservative should. I mean, if you aren't looking at people as individuals, then you're not looking at one of the core values of being a conservative. You take people as they are, not try to sit there and say, they're this or that, they look like this, so we're going to put them in that group. But, that's what the liberals do. Again, it goes, what is a true liberal versus what is a faux liberal? Faux liberals see everybody as some sort of a block. Everybody has to be in some box with everybody that looks like them or talks like them or acts like them. And as a classical liberal, which is what conservatism is based on, American conservatism is based on, we have to look at people as individuals. And that makes us the least racist of the two groups.
Yeah. And again, that's steeped in history. I mean, people don't know that, some of our first Republican office holders were black, that who fought for civil rights, who fought for the end of slavery. Everyone has a gross misperception about some of those historical facts. So, it's all revisionist.
Right. And, it wasn't the French, it wasn't the continental Europeans that fought the end of the slave trade. It was basically the British through the Royal Navy that did that. It was basically because they were starting to apply the cultural, the classical liberal ideas to everybody, not just to white people or not just to English people. And once they started to apply it to everybody, and that was the big thing with the Civil War. There was groups in the North that decided, wait a minute, no, we need to apply the classical liberal idea that all men are created equal to everybody. And they went out and started the emancipation movement. So it's amazing. It's amazing history once you understand it, and it makes you proud to be a part of it.
John, tell us where we can continue to follow your work. You've talked about the blog. I know you're on Twitter. Tell us where we can find you and what's next for you.
Yeah, you can follow me on johnlhancock.blogspot.com. That's my blog. My website is libertyinherited.com. And then what I'm doing right now is finishing the research on a book that basically will trace the American liberties through England, basically 1,600 years of 1,600-year history of liberty and how it evolved from nothing into one of the greatest forces that or systems that mankind has ever seen.
Amazing. Well, I hope you'll come back when that book's done and tell us all about it.
I appreciate it. That'd be great.
Thanks for being our guest tonight.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If you're just joining us, we've had this hour Professor Carol Swain from Vanderbilt University. If you want to follow her on Twitter, she is at Carol M as in Marie. I don't know what her middle name is, but Carol M. Swain. And you can also find her on Facebook under Professor Carol Swain, Ph.D. Our other guest this hour has been John L. Hancock. As he mentioned, you can follow his blog at johnlhancock.blogspot.com or on Twitter, at John L. Hancock. This is Marie Strotter for African American Conservatives. Once again, urging you, please, please, please do something this political cycle. We've got to change the trend of this country. As Dr. Swain pointed out, we need to get everybody looking up. That's the direction we need to move in. We need to move up, looking above. This is Marie Strotter for African American Conservatives, the soul of the conservative movement, saying good night. Thank you for joining African American Conservatives, the soul of the conservative movement. Please join us at www.africanamericanconservatives.com. There you'll find information about our Twitter feed, Facebook page, and our blog. All opinions expressed here are those of this show and our guests. Copyright African American Conservatives.